Hey, this is Zac.
And I'm Clint, and we wanted to thank Exoterra for sponsoring this episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Exoterra is the industry leader in glass terrarium enclosures, and we are a big fan of getting to see the species we work with both at home and at the university.
We utilize Exoterra caging here at Metazotics, and in addition to top quality terrariums, Exoterra offers an array of heating options, lighting, supplements, decor, and truthfully anything needed or wanted when keeping reptiles.
Thank you, Exoterra, for supporting Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Hello. We are starting now. We're live, and my damn battery pack is not working. So I might just go away into nothing in about the next 20 seconds so everybody knows. But that's what happens when you go live. So that's what I got to say. PhD is not going to save me now. That's for damn sure. So Clint, start talking while I fiddle with this and hope this stupid cord doesn't have a short in it. Okay.
You got it. We've got a great episode tonight, everybody. I mean, we're pretty excited about it. We're having another round table. Got some great guests that Zac will introduce here in a little while. And I think tonight's topic is going to be routines, kind of what our routines are when handling the different types of keeping methods, different types and sizes of collections, things like that. And I think that's going to be awesome. But let's jump into kind of what we've got going on. We're going to do our best tonight to shrink the intro a little bit. We're still going to touch everything that we normally do. But we want to allow just a little bit more time, for tonight's topic, because we've got, multiple guests. Going to be a lot of chatting going on.
Sure.
Well, how are you, Zac? I mean, did you get your battery pack fit? Are we good?
Battery's working.
Battery's working. We're solid.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good. We're good.
All right,
I'm well. I want to talk a little bit about the origin of this idea.
Yeah,
so I was driving around listening to a podcast. I have no idea which one. I listened to them all. Might have been Cush's podcast. Now I'm thinking about it. And he just started asking the guest. It didn't have anything to do with this, with the animal that the topic was. It was just like, so what do you like? What's your routine? And I just sat there thinking, that is such an amazing question.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do a lot of species specific episodes, right? But when it comes to colubrids, a lot of times you can keep a pine snake the same way you keep a corn snake, the same way you keep a milk snake, same way you keep a king snake. And with that being said, we have all kinds of different keepers. We have people that are mostly naturalistic keeping. We have people that have large operations like Metazotics. We have people that have 4 snakes, 40 snakes, 400 snakes. And I find that I oftentimes nerd out more on learning the little nuggets of how you get past this issue or that issue. So that's why we have our guests tonight, because we respect them all. They're part of our community. So we have Josh Alder talking with us tonight. We have Bree, who we just had on relatively recently, but we were so impressed with her episode that we're like, bring her back. And we have Montross with Dark Horse Herp. So they all have similar but different operations. And obviously Clint and I are here with our respective operations. So should be a fun one tonight.
Yeah, I think so.
As far as updates, now that I'm not as flustered as I was before. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Summer is finally starting to settle. I don't realize how mentally fractured I am during the semester until about this time in the summer, where I'm like, holy hell, I can have one thought in a minute and not have to come up with 300 different answers to different things. So it's good. Also made it out to Iowa. When I got to Iowa, just a quick update on that, because, Colubrid Fest funds that with the CCR Conservation Corps funding. The hognose snakes are taking a hit this year. We're learning. I'm going to tell you one thing. You don't want to be a hognose coming out of brumation. That's for damn sure. We lost 3 or 4 of them in a matter of 10 days. Lots of raptors. So hawks basically eating them is what we think was going on with those. And it's kind of interesting because we put the transmitters in late May, June. And we were so excited because everybody made it through the whole summer and everybody went into brumation. And then they came out, and I just think they're so exposed out there, and they all got they didn't all, but they definitely got hit hard. So little natural history nugget that, we have. And there was another study done in Minnesota with telemetry that saw a similar thing. So we're kind of backing up their claims. But one thing that we're doing this year, which is my quick story about Iowa, is we decided another colubrid. One of the things that's amazing about this funding stream that we have is that we get to study the animals that aren't necessarily rare. And one of the great kind of bass-ackward things about conservation is you can't get money to study something until it's about to go extinct. And ironically, if we could study it before it goes extinct, we might be able to figure out a way to keep it from going extinct.
Right.
On our study site, we have blue racers. And one of my students, growth thing I've talked about, Alyssa, she was at Colubrid Fest last year. She really nerded out with the blue racers. And I realized that they're an important predator for the hognose because they eat everything. So this year, we are putting transmitters in 15 blue racers. And the joke among the entire research team in Iowa was, we're going to put transmitters in these, put them down, and never see them again. That's the racers. You know what I mean? And so there was a little bit of trepidation. Transmitters went in. We released 5, and 4 of them behaved, which means they went about 100 meters, 200 meters, which isn't that much, maybe. I think most of them went like 50 meters. But there's always that one guy. There's always that one guy. And we went to track this. I think it was a male, and we couldn't get a signal. And we're walking around the sand dunes, and then we just heard the faintest little beep. And I'll fast forward 2.5 hours later, we found him, and he had moved 2 miles away from our release site. And please understand, those are straight line distances, and the snakes don't move in straight line distances.
Right.
Thing went through a prairie, it went through a riparian forest, it went through a wetland, it went through this stuff called reed canary grass, which is this invasive grass that takes over marshes, and then it went up onto this berm for the Mississippi River. And we actually know we found them because we're tracking them. It was me, Dawn, and Alyssa. We're like looking in the general area, and I hear Alyssa say, "I effing see him," after 2.5 hours of trying to find him. And he was up in a bush basking. And that animal has stayed way away. The other animals are back on the prairie. So it's pretty cool story. It's fun piece. You guys that helped contribute with the auction.
Awesome.
And I see Eric's in the chat. Eric sells the bracelets that go to Colubrid Fest. You buy the stuff at Metazotics. You're helping mold this future conservationist, and you're getting us really cool information on a snake that we don't normally get to study, but we do. And it's being done by the Colubrid community, which is pretty freaking awesome. So, and I've been keeping up with Alyssa, and I'm like, did anybody misbehave today? That's like the text. And it's like, no, they're all kind of behaving. So that's that. And then the other update real quick is we're catching hognose snakes as we speak, to kind of make up for the ones that have perished. And we just had way more transmitters to put in animals this year. So with the crazy weather the Midwest is having, where it's like insanely hot, then for this time of year cold, it's been a little bit interesting. Last year we had a very steady spring. This year we have peaks and valleys. And it's kind of cool because the snake community has shifted. We're not seeing anywhere near the garter snakes that we saw last year. Which is kind of interesting. The eastern hogs are kind of few and far between right now, but the westerns are moving out on the prairie as well as the racers. So, and of course, bull snakes are present as well. So that's my Iowa update. And as far as collection's concerned, I'm egged out. I think I have my bull snakes dropped eggs on Tuesday. Hognose snakes have dropped. Leonis. That's a new one for me this spring. Got 2 clutches on the ground. I have 2 females, both dropped. And I bought all my Leonis at Colubrid Fest, so that's kind of fun. But, that's it. I got false waters that are probably hatching because, I need more of those, like a bullet in my brain. But if you want a false water cobra, the CCR special will be in place this year as well. So hit your man up. Okay, what's up with you?
We've had some kind of cool things take place out here. So the biggest change we've had since the last episode is we had a reverse osmosis filtration system put in. And the way we have it set up is it's going into a reservoir, where we can get the water. And so we're kind of changing what all the animals are getting. They're going to get that water with calcium and magnesium added back in, since it completely wipes everything. It's just amazing that water can get that clean. But it also runs into our pond, our turtle pond. And it automatically refills it. And once it hits a level, it stops shooting water over to that end. So now we do not ever have to refill that damn thing again. And we've got our albino red ear sliders back now that the pond is officially up running and everything's done. And so, I miss those little guys. They're kind of fun to just walk by, stop and stare at for a little while. They're funny. They do silly stuff. So, so that's really cool. We like that. We also, so Corey has been tracking, she's got a nice big spreadsheet, because you know how we are about spreadsheets here, right? She's got a nice big spreadsheet where she's keeping track of every clutch that is laid, the female, the male, how many eggs were laid that were good, how many slugs were laid. And it will also track how many of those good eggs hatched, or were they full term and dead in egg, any issues. And the whole thought process is we now can start weeding out bad breeders. You know what I mean? We can keep track of actual productivity, through them. And, do we need to try another male? Oh, nope. We've done 2 different males. We're still having the same results, whatever. So with that so far, this is something I'll continue to kind of update as the season goes on. We've got 413 eggs laid so far. We're just getting started. I mean, and 65 slugs. We've already had 65 slugs this year. There's a couple like complete clutch, slugs, slugged out. So far, 86% of the eggs that were laid are good, that we can tell, meaning we're expecting them to hatch. So again, something that we'll kind of look at on such a big scale and see, where it comes out. Now, I will say a lot of that so far has been ball pythons. That's technically not accurate anymore. Colubrids are starting, and, they add up very quickly, so that's happening. And, good stuff locally. The weather, so there's been a lot of rain lately, but it has been herp heaven, really? As far as, it as good as it gets around here anyway. We were fishing today. A little Nerodia was swimming past us. Kaylee, who runs our nursery, she shared some pictures with me I thought were just amazing. She went to the wetlands that are in Henderson, so where our other store is. A place you can visit if you come to Colubrid Fest, FYI, like 30 minutes from Colubrid Fest. So she was at the wetlands, and in just one day of walking through there, black racer, a muskrat, Nerodia, thinking maybe a black rat. I can't remember if that was there or not. But the coolest thing, she said, right as she was about to leave, she turns and there's a tree that has fallen over, a big tree. And she's like, oh, a snake. And there's a garter snake laying on it. And then she says, ooh, another snake. Another snake. 3 garters all laid out on top of this big fallen tree, basking. And I was like, that's really, really cool. It's one thing to flip something and see multiple snakes over it, but to see multiple basking right there on that same spot was really neat. So, again, they're at, and we've had another snake get into the mouse room.
Nice.
It was an Eastern king, Eastern black king this time. And Wendy comes bringing it to me thinking it's one of our natives that we display here. I'm like, no, our natives are bigger than that. And a little wild one came in. So, it was pretty cool. So that was neat. And then I want to share one completely non-relating, non-reptile related story, just because I thought it was funny and I know you'd get a kick out of it. So on Facebook, there's this page called Evansville Watch. And I think most cities have something like this.
Yes.
Where basically it's a group of people that listen to police scanners and all the what's going on locally and post what happens. Now, we didn't know about this when it occurred. Okay. Instead, I was tagged. My wife tagged me in it about 3 or 4 days after this was posted. And it says, be on the lookout. General complaint. Washington, and here's what's going through my head as I'm reading this. Washington Avenue and Brentwood Drive. I think, oh, that's 2 blocks from my house. Caller states a juvenile wearing a black helmet on a mini bike is doing, and in quotes, tiny mini bike stuff. And then I think my son has a mini bike and a black. Oh shit! That's Smith had the cops called on him. So
wow, he made the Evansville watch.
Yeah. So my 11-year-old son gets the cops called on him for riding his mini bike around the neighborhood. But I want to say, and I'm so grateful. This was one of my little, okay, humanity still has a chance, because when I went to it and looked at all the comments, they are just ripping this caller apart. Yeah, I guess you should go back in and get on the video games. And, sounds like the cops need to talk to the caller, leave the kid alone. I'm like, yes, yes, there's still hope for us. So I would have said, if I had to bet on which one of my kids would have the cops,
I was about to say that.
Yeah, it would have been him. No, Dex in a heartbeat. I don't know how he hasn't already.
Yeah,
but it was Smith. So
yeah, that's crazy. It was Smith. I'm actually proud of Smith.
Fun times with the Bartley household. So that's what we've got going on here. Other than that, I mean, business is going fantastic, and we just keep cranking away with all the new changes that we've made. So
cool.
Okay. Do you want me to start with?
Yeah, you start.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll jump into the market update. As always, the market update is brought to you by the Show Me Reptile Show. And as we always tell you, the Colubrid Fest wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Mickey and the Show Me Reptile crew. So please, if there's a Show Me show anywhere near you, go check them out. They support those who support us, and by us, I mean us in the Colubrid community. I will, and this is going to be, I didn't even take a note on this, but speaking of Show Me, we're going to have to make a quick point right now about shows in general. So one of the, how I am with my data and my tracking, one of the things that we've done this year is not only have we tracked the volume of sales we do at each show, I have broken that down into an average per day. So per show day. Some shows are 2 days, some shows are 1 day. So I want to know how we're doing per day. And then I took it even further and I broke that down into average day per promotion. So there's different show promotions that we vend at. And so it kind of helps me see where the best spots for us to go truly are, right? And I feel that it's probably, I should share this and give Show Me a big pat on the back. While I don't feel that it's appropriate for me to share actual dollars, because that's not, kind of not fair for everybody, I guess. But right now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different promotions that we do shows with. Okay. The number one is kind of skewed. And the number one so far this year is KRE, the Kentucky Reptile Expo out of Lexington. The reason it's skewed is because we've only done one show there so far this year. And don't get me wrong, Jared is one of my favorite freaking promoters out there. He knows that. We talk about it, Jared does a great job. When I say it's skewed, it's because that show, Steve didn't do it, and Steve does bugs. Mm-hmm. And so when Steve doesn't do it, I do bugs on top of everything that we do, as well. And so we're going to have a very beefed up, show at that point. However, number two, and not that far behind KRE's number, is Show Me. And understand when I say that, we do Tinley. We've done the big Atlanta show.
Yeah.
We've done the big Nashville show. However, we are averaging more per Show Me show day than we are per day at any other promotion. So kudos to the Show Me Reptile group, because they're really putting it through the door for us.
Got some data.
So, yeah. I mean, and that's it. It didn't lie. Didn't lie at all. Okay. So what I want to talk about for today's market update is something we've really noticed over the last 3 weeks. And that is going to be online sales. So there are and again, just a reminder, macro, micro. Macro events are going to be things that are taking place across the entire country, or at least in a big regional area for you. Micro events are going to be more you or right in your general vicinity. And I think that Metazotics has got both macro and micro events hitting at the same time right now that have really seen a huge leap in online transactions. So the macro events, and here's the things that are going to affect everybody. One, as I've been saying for months, and we've been tracking the data, we are sitting right now at the lowest number of posted animals that we will see throughout the entire year right now. That's going to end in just a matter of weeks. It's going to start creeping back up as things start hatching, new things get listed. So there's not as many things to look at. And a lot of what you can look at has been sitting there for a while. So they've already seen it, right? So that's one. Number two, gas. I talked about this on the last episode, and I have to talk about it again. So with the high price of gas, what that seems to have caused people to do is not move as much, if that makes sense. So not taking the vacations and really just not going and doing nearly as much, because when you're paying $5 plus per gallon of gas, it's hard to justify it.
Sure.
So it's almost, while it's not nearly to the same degree, it's almost the COVID effect again, where people are becoming more stationary, thumbing through their phones, looking at pictures again. And where do snake people end up? Or I say snake people, reptile people in general end up on the marketplaces, Morph Market, King Snake, Show Me Marketplace, all those. They're looking at, they're just wanting eye candy. And then what does that translate to? I think I want that. Boom. Can I buy it? Whatever. So those are the two macro that are going to affect all of us. And the micro event that changed for us, that I want to say, this is how I'm strongly suggesting everyone make this same change. We moved, as I mentioned before, Corey and Kaylee, the two of them are now taking care of the collection in the nursery. Kaylee has been all over the pictures. We are getting pictures taken and posted at a much faster rate than we've ever experienced at Metazotics, because it's all been me doing that, and I just don't have the time. And so she's cranking those out, which is causing us to have new things to put online in a time where most of what's online has been sitting there for a while. So fresh faces, so to speak. The other thing that we changed was Corey took over answering the questions that were shot whenever it came, like Morph Market inquiries, things like that. What that change did was response time increased significantly, because a lot of times it would take me a day to reply back. And I think we missed a lot of the, oh, I really want this. Then they sleep on it, and then it's just not as exciting anymore, and especially if they're asking, what's the weight on this? And is this eating this? And I'm like, when I get back there, especially can I get a couple more pictures? I hate that. So I'm like, yeah. Is there something specifically you're looking for on it? Because it looks exactly like the picture that I posted. It's no different. Here's it from the left side, the right side looks just like the left side. But with them answering those, and they do those things, they get the pictures that they're asking for, they get the weights, the feeding, all that in a matter of hours versus a matter of a day. And our online sales typically account for about 6 to 12% of our total revenue. Over the last 3 weeks, without our in-store traffic going down, that didn't happen. In the last 3 weeks, it's jumped up to about 25 to 30%. of our overall revenue.
That's crazy.
It has been insane. You know how many I'll do this for the viewers as well. Whenever they ship out snakes, they put their ID cards on my desk, and that tells me how to, take them down from the marketplaces and get them out of our system. I was off today, and this is what they sent out just today. It's something like, gosh, there's probably 20, 25 snakes here. And so my whole point with this, guys, is if you have things that you're looking to move, get your pictures out there right now. If you wait 3 weeks, you're starting to go now in the uptick. Right now. Do it in the next 3 days if you can. On top of that, be all over your responses. Increase your response time as fast as you can right now and capitalize over the next 3 weeks, because it's definitely, if I think the strait's supposed to be opening again, gas prices are supposed to be falling now, is what we've heard today. We'll see how that plays out, right? But as long as they're still up there, people are going to still stall for a little bit. So make your move while you can.
Cool.
That's what I got, buddy. It's over to you.
Okay. Who sponsors that?
I said it. Show me. Started that way.
You did. Shit.
I did. PhD.
We've sworn more than we have ever on this episode. That battery pack flustered me. Okay. The Science Update is brought to us by Rare Genetics, Inc. As always, make sure you're sending your sheds to Kayla and Ben and company. Use our code, get a discount. They recently announced they have a test now for the albino hognose snake gene, which is a pretty big deal. We will probably in the next month or so have Kayla and Ben on just to give us an update on everything that they're doing over there, because we love having them on. We love what they're doing, and we love that they support us. So thank you all. So Science Update tonight is going to be in reference to our brother in the podcast space, which is Joe, who does Colubrid Corruption podcast, which pretty much, if you listen to CCR, you need to listen to that one if you're not. And most people listen to both of us anyway. So, there's that. And I, as one of the resident crypto peeps, people that people come to whenever crypto hits their collection, Joe put out a podcast recently, made an announcement that he has crypto in his collection. I want to give Joe some mad props. He could have kept that secret, could have kept that under the veil and not told anyone. And, he's a man of true character. He basically put it right out in the open. And what I really like, because I listened to his hour-long pod today, talking about the whole process of finding he had it in the collection, talking to people, coming up with a plan to deal with it. Is the point of this is that this can hit any of us. A big thing that we have preached, and that is the correct word, preached, is that it should not be treated as a scarlet letter. You should not be shamed if you get it. I'll say it. We say it all the time. You have more than 100 snakes. I don't know how the hell you don't have one with crypto in there. So we need to be very open. We need to be transparent. And most importantly, it's a common threat to all of us. So we all need to work together to learn as much as we can, so that whenever crypto hits, we can talk to each other and work our way through it. That's what we need to be doing.
And just to reiterate that point you just made, that there are going to be so many of us out there that this is somewhere within our our four walls, and we don't realize it. When Zac and I were talking about this just the other day, I said the size of collection that we have here in Metazotics, obviously there have been times something's not acting right. We're getting tests done, and so far, every test that we've ran on any snake here has come back negative. And I think my exact words to Zac when we were talking about that was, that doesn't tell me there's not crypto somewhere in this building. What it tells me is I haven't tested that snake yet. Is what it tells me. You know what I mean? And that's just the way that, we all need to really think about it. None of us are on a freaking pedestal, with any of this. It can happen to any. You can have the best quarantine practices and it still hits you. It's part of it. So I know that was one of the things Joe said, was he was afraid he was going to be, kind of blacklisted or something like that for this. No. And I know it's not going to happen from the people that are on this show.
Absolutely
We're going to
not.
help Joe in any way that he can, any way we can to get him through it. And I hope the rest of the Kluber community does the same. So,
yes.
Sorry, Zach, back to you, buddy.
No, that's fine. Couldn't say it better myself. So the paper we're going to talk about today came out either yesterday or the day before. It's less than a week old.
Ooh.
And I think it's a cool one. So we're just going to throw it up here. And Dr. Oz, who's been on our show, is one of the authors. There he is, Robert J. Osboff. And then Terry Farrell there. He's one of my absolute favorite herpetologists. I got to hang with him in Florida last year. Terry's fantastic. If you want to see what Zac Loughman's going to be like when he's 65 and doesn't care about anything anymore, spend an hour with Terry. That's what everybody, all the students were like, that's going to be you in like 2 decades. I was like, yeah, pretty much. But what's awesome about this paper is, the title of it is, if you're in your car, Health Assessment and Multi-Pathogen Surveillance of Free-Ranging Snakes in the Southeastern U.S. is, I love when the veterinary world and the field world join forces on a paper. We don't know baseline infection rates for a lot of diseases that impact our snakes. And the only way that you can learn that is have the people out in the field basically taking the same swab we use for, snake fungal disease screening, serpentivirus, mycoplasma, or crypto, and swabbing away at wild-caught snakes and sending it off to get it tested so we can kind of get a background rate of infection. And one of the organisms that they tested for in this study is crypto. So we never, ever talk about what the rate of crypto is in nature. We always talk about what it is in our collections. And so I'm going to kind of go through this quickly, but one more time, Mission et al. 2026, Health Assessment and Multi-Pathogen Surveillance of Free-Ranging Snakes in the Southeastern U.S. This paper is open access. Every single person listening to us can get it. We might even try to share a link. I know Max is here. I see him. You don't. But maybe we can share that on our Facebook socials so that you can get a copy of it. So what did they find when it comes to crypto? Well, first and foremost, they sampled, I think the number was, it was like 457 snakes in this study. So this is a big study, okay? What was the infection rate in nature for Cryptosporidium? I have it right here. Cryptosporidium was present in 10 out of 489 snakes. So what does that tell us about crypto? That tells me, when I'm looking at it, that this might be more of a pathogen that's present in captive animals than wild animals. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. But you always, when you're doing science, have to do what we call the null hypothesis, which is do the opposite of what you just said. So in this case, the opposite would be it's just as prevalent out in nature as it is in our wild animals. And I don't have time to go to it, but the very bottom part of the paper, they do make a statement about how it could be that they basically can't make the snakes crap on demand. And so the swabbing they were doing was primarily cloacal swabs. And then if they were fortunate enough to have a snake defecate on them, I can't believe I said that out loud. There you go.
Not a statement you're really going to hear anywhere else.
But science, man.
Fortunate enough.
Yeah, I know Tyler was really happy when the hognose were crapping on him. So anyway, that's how you're going to get your fecal sample. All righty. So this paper it's what we call applied science. It's very descriptive. I love this stuff because it kind of gives you an idea of what's going on. I'm going to skip down. Sorry if you're watching this on YouTube. I hate when people do this, but there we are. Here we go. One of the statements they have is overall Cryptosporidium detection prevalence among all tested snakes for which at least one sample type, cloacal swab, feces, and or tissue extracts was available was 2.0%. We already, said that. If we get down here, this table is pretty interesting. It basically shows you 0 of the juvenile snakes. They had 142 juveniles had crypto in it. The crypto was coming out of the adults. Can't look too much into that, but at the same time, we talk about this, that when crypto hits babies, it just kills them.
Yeah, gone.
Yeah. And when crypto's present in the adults, it doesn't. It lingers. So, this could or could not be some evidence to support that, but it's pretty interesting.
And can't we also say that, we so far in all the research, crypto doesn't pass from a mother to egg and hatchling, which would also, that number would kind of support that as well. So,
now,
okay, this is interesting as hell. I love this, Zach. Go ahead.
And then table 5 is one of my favorites because they just go species by species by species by species. So what wild snakes in the Southeast, and they pretty much, most of the wild snakes in the Southeast are in this study. Racers, 1 out of 54 tested positive for crypto. I'm going to say this for the people in their car. Ringneck snakes, 2 out of 33. Okay. Indigos, mud snakes, rainbow snakes, scarlet kings, eastern kings, no crypto in any of those animals. Sorry. It looks like
one with an indigo.
One indigo had it. Okay. And that was the only indigo in the study. So there you go. Striped crayfish snake, 2 out of 12. So our nature scenes are showing crypto. That's really interesting to me because I don't think I've ever had, to my knowledge, crypto in a natricid. It's always in the rodent-eating snakes that I seem to see it in. So that was kind of cool. If we come down here, Montross, who's on the show, or banded water snakes, fasciata, doesn't let us know if it's a Florida or just a banded. 3 out of 141. So large sample size, one of the most common snakes in the study, but they only have 3 that had it. What I thought was interesting, if you're on YouTube, I highlighted the species that we keep a lot. So we've got our rat snake, corn snake, pine snake. None of those in nature that they sampled had crypto in them, but you kind of read this with a grain of, cautiously, because there were only 4 corn snakes in the study and there were only 2 pine snakes in the study. But we have 27, rat snakes. That's a decent number from across the range, and none of them have crypto in them. Moving down. So ultimately, not that much crypto out there in the wild snakes. Could be an artifact of sampling bias because we're jabbing a swab up in a cloaca and pulling out spores that way. But I also know that we have gently jabbed a swab up into the cloaca of our captive snakes at the university and totally gotten crypto hit after crypto hit after crypto hit when we were having an outbreak. So why am I talking about this in relation to Joe in any way? This disease, there's a lot of evidence, some of it's circumstantial, but there is evidence kind of pointing towards crypto being a more prevalent thing in captivity. Why? It's simple. They can't get away from the poop.
Right.
So you shed the spore. A snake out in a freaking flat woods in the southeastern United States, it drops a deuce, doesn't hang out by it and say hi. It just keeps on going. When we have a rack tub, they poop. The poop's there. The forids come in. They're also consolidated around your racks or your vivs. So we just have this perfect storm for crypto to spread in captive snakes, whereas out in the wild, the probability of it happening it appears to be much lower. Another fun fact, because I'm going over time here, is that they also found a lot of comorbidities with crypto. So the snakes that had crypto also had snake fungal disease and mycoplasma. It was very rare for a crypto-positive animal to just have crypto, which is kind of evidence, maybe not, it's just fun to think about, that the animals that were stressed were the animals that had crypto. See? So I recommend, if you're a snake keeper, that you read this paper. It's a good one. I would love to have, if any of our vet friends read this and they think what I said was BS, by all means, we're all about putting right information out there. But as an ecologist reading this and looking at it through the lens that I look through the world in, I was just kind of like, yep, that tracks. So keep keep those forids low, get that poo out of there, quarantine. And hopefully you don't have to deal with this. And one more time, we're here for you, Joe. We support you, Joe. And that's all I got to say about that. Cool.
Good stuff. Good stuff, buddy.
All right. Are we ready to begin?
I think so. We're about to move to our guest segment. And as you know, guest segment is brought to you by ReptiChip. ReptiChip is utilized here at Metazotics for really anything that needs humidity. And of course, Zac uses it out there for incubation. ReptiChip is the premium cocoa husk, and cocoa chip substrate out there. It's better than any of the others, and I've tried several. So get yourself some Repti chip whenever you can. Good stuff. Let's go with it.
We're going to bring people to the stage. So here we have Josh. Here we have Montross. And here we have Bree. How are we all
back,
doing?
everyone.
We good?
We good.
We're good.
All right.
Sweet. Okay. So when we reached out to people, we obviously reached out to people that are friends of the show, and we wanted a diverse suite of keepers for this one. So we're going to just let each of you kind of introduce yourselves. What I'd like for you to do is go over just at 100,000-foot view, how big your collection is, what colubrids you're keeping, and then if you don't mind just kind of throwing out into the ether whether you're doing primarily racks or vivaria or a combination of both, and then we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty of how you use those. But with that being said, we'll start with Josh first, and then go Bree, and then Chris.
Yeah, I'm Josh Alder. I own and operate the Exotic Empire. We're an import facility primarily. Lots of captive bred stuff from Europe, but also lots of U.S. bred stuff as well. A little bit of wild caught still in the mix as well. But collection size here really varies week to week. At my fullest, I'm probably around 500 or 600 animals. At my lowest, I'm around 2. Actually, probably 3. But we're right around 250 species at any given time. So big variety here, a lot of different animals, different sizes, different enclosure requirements. So I'm doing primarily racks for any of the smaller species of snakes, and then vivariums and PVC cages for the bigger stuff. And then obviously we have a bunch of lizards and all that too. So that's all vivariums.
Nice.
But yeah, no. So kind of just depends on the week. You asked me what size collection is. So
yeah, that tracks. Okay. Next.
We go. Montross.
Let's go, Montross.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
I'm Chris. I post under Dark Horse Horticulture. I mostly keep southeastern rat snakes and water snakes. I keep a handful of different pythons and boas for the fun of it, and breed some. I have no idea how many snakes are in my collection. It's just I have some. I don't know. I don't add them up. I don't know. What else you want me to say?
Tubs, Vivs, what's the ratio?
Tubs. Oh, tubs.
Your tubs are big. So.
You can see some Vivs behind me with in black box cages behind me. I have some poplin carpets in tubs. I don't really use rack systems per se. Like you guys may use some fab commercial things because they're just ridiculously expensive. I just use shelves with different types of bins racked up on them. And I made some, I have one set of racks in my room with big 200 quart Sterilite, big giant tubs, the big Christmas tree tubs that I made myself specific for those. But otherwise, all my other bins are all lidded bins. So mix of both, I guess, technically.
Cool.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right, Bree, tell us about your setup.
I'm Bree from Bree's Exotics, and also the Jungle Vault is our business. We have probably an 80-20 for vivariums and racks. As you can see behind me, it's pretty much mostly Vivs back there. And then we got 2 racks that mostly house our North American colubrids, some gray banded king snakes, Mexican hognose, Western hognose. Yeah, that's actually an Arizona Mountain King. There's 2 Arizona Mountain Kings in the racks. And then we keep we keep some Asian colubrids, cave racers, red-tailed green rat snakes. And then we have some house snakes, which are not necessarily colubrids, but I could be rattling off for a while. But we have a lot of species of both colubrids. We have a few pythons, a boa, tons of frogs, and lizards. So we got a nice mix of stuff everywhere.
All right, cool.
Excellent.
Okay, so first question right off the rip, before we get into husbandry, is we're talking about routines. So when we talk about routine, you obviously have the space that you keep your animals in. A lot of people, the MPR folks will talk about the rhythm of the room. So you basically get your animals in the room, and then you kind of have to figure out the room where you put the animals that might need more cool or more hot conditions. And then you got lights and everything else. We're going to get to that husbandry piece, but I didn't know where to put this in there. And I feel like it's one of the most important parts of a routine. So we're just going to start with this question. When it comes to record keeping, what does record keeping look like for you all? And by record keeping, I mean just kind of walk through your process. I don't do record keeping. I do record keeping. I'm logging every single thing they eat. I don't care if I log what they eat. But is there a kind of routine that you have when it comes to what information you want to know about the animals? And this is going to be fun because, you know, Josh is bringing animals in and moving animals out, whereas the other guys are kind of keeping them there. And then Clint and I can add our piece to this as well. Mm-hmm. So for all the questions, we'll just go across the top. We'll go to Bree, then we'll go to Chris, then we'll go to Josh, if that works. Cool?
Works.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bree, when it comes to record keeping, and then the other thing is, what are you keeping them in? Are you old school notebook sits on the shelf? Do you use Husbandry Pro, Excel spreadsheet? Like, what's that look like?
So because we have so many different species, just one method doesn't seem to be the best one. So we actually, I've been using Husbandry Pro for maybe 4 or 5 years now, basically when it first launched. But I did start with like little cue cards and I would write them down. Handwriting is like my least favorite thing in the world. So as the moment I could get away from writing something, I was right onto it. So for all of the colubrids, Chihuahua geckos, and turtles, we use Husbandry Pro. For things like the frogs and I guess small grass lizard, fish scale geckos, and a few of those other like oddball things, notebook, we have like a notebook that sits by an egg tray right there. And we also just write on the enclosure themselves. If it's like a hatch date or something quick and easy, jotted down, shed, laid, hatch date. That's the easiest way for those kind of like oddball species. Eggs are stuck to the walls in the enclosure. There's nowhere they're going. But yeah, for the most part, we use Husbandry Pro to track all of the main colubrids and snakes in the room. I personally record every single feeding, whether they skip it, refuse the meal, and I record weights multiple times a year. I track brumation records, and I keep QR codes on all the bins so I can go through, scan them all really quick. And then I give those QR codes out to people who purchase from us, so they have the full record keeping as well.
Well, yeah, I'm on a flight to Iowa. I downloaded Husbandry Pro, and then I watched some YouTube videos and was like, I'm buying this. I haven't done it yet, but that's my, when I get back from this trip next week, the whole collection here is going on. So.
It's a lot to get set up, that's for sure. But once you have it's been a game changer for incubation, breeding records, and lineage, which is, I'm a huge fan of keeping track of everyone related to who. But that's been my favorite thing, looking up records from like 4 years ago from someone I sold a hognose who's like, hey, do you remember what this was? And it's been so easy for me.
That was going to be, so one of my questions, because I've flirted with getting Husbandry Pro for a while, because I'm looking for what the right answer is on something of this scale that, you know, we're doing out here. Roughly how many animals are you utilizing Husbandry Pro for right now?
I'd say there's maybe 60 to 80. Obviously it increases with hatchlings and kind of goes back down, but there's about like a 60 where it kind of sits for all of our breeding animals, and neonates and all that stuff is kind of just where it sits. And then the turtles and weird stuff like that.
How much time for 60 animals does it take to utilize?
It took forever to set up, like forever. Once it's set up, I can go through the rack and I can mark everyone in the rack as fed, not fed in like 10 seconds, 30 seconds. That doesn't take any time. When eggs hatch and I convert them to hatchlings, obviously that's me picking and nitpicking animal codes and all that stuff. Even that doesn't take that long. It was just getting the initial animals in there and getting all their records in there that took the big brunt of it. That took me several weeks to get set up.
Gotcha.
I think me and
Okay.
Clint were making the same face because all I could think about was like setting all of that up with the speed in which animals come in and out. And I'm like, oh my God, like I could never keep it that way. Like it's so awesome,
Yeah.
but you're like, you can manage your collection like that. Cause like I'm super jealous of it, you know? But yeah, I could see Clint's face doing the same thing mine was. I was like, man, that sounds so cool, but I have no
And
idea
I
how I
made
keep
the
up that much.
mistake. I made the mistake of being like, yeah, I'm going to set this up. And when I first got it and first set it up, I set it up in like my peak breeding season. So here I am trying to enter in the like attachments of like all of these neonates and connecting them to all the adults like one by one
Oh,
by one
yeah.
by one. And that was the
Yeah.
worst decision I ever made. So I would say if you're going to get something like that, don't do it when you have tons of animals, tons
Winter.
of babies.
Too late.
Do it in
Yeah.
your slow
Too
season when
late, yeah.
things are maybe in brumation and then set it up. But if you have animals like coming through, like revolving regularly, I can see how that would be an absolute nightmare, which is why we
Well-
use like notebooks and pen and paper and scribbling
Yeah.
on tanks for other stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
my fear is even, I mean, for the collection, because the collection's still pushing 500, 600, 700 animals, and to get all of those loaded in. And don't get me wrong, I mean, if we were to do it, we would take the time to get that done. But then my question, I guess, that I'm looking at is, once that time investment is there, how much time is it weekly to then utilize for 500 or 600 animals? You know, that's more where I'm like,
So
Yeah.
fast.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was just getting it set up. And then after that, I spend barely any time on it. It tracks the feeders and stuff. So if I'm like burning through my rodents, I get a reminder so that I don't go to the freezer one day and be like, oh, well, forgot. But other than that, like it's really quick and easy to just plug it in. I don't know. I know they're launching like a new version. Not tried that. Don't know how that is yet. But currently, once you have everything in there with that massive overtaking that is, it's been super quick, like very quick.
Cool.
I'm going to say this just because I know she's in the chat. I'm not worried about how much work that would be because Corey would be doing all of that work. Good to
There
see
you
you, Corey.
Yes. All right, Chris. What are you doing?
All right. I'm doing about as opposite of what she does. Okay. I am very simplistic with any record keeping that I do. And that's not to say that I don't record keep. I keep it very simplistic. And more of it is mental about what's happening with the animals. The only thing I keep a record of feeding is baby rat snakes that are housed individually or case before, snakes like that. I keep track of that to keep up with feeding habits and how they ate. Did they drop feed? Did they have to be teased? Did they have to be cupped? Whatever that case may be, so that I can see patterns, so I can decide are they ready to move out or are they staying, that sort of thing. Any of my keeper juveniles, no feeding records at all. Nothing. It's all just, I know what those particular animals are doing breeding wise, male or female, do they need, that's all in front of me while I'm looking at them. And so I just make calls at feeding times based on the time of the year of what those particular animals eat, how they look. I don't know when they ate last. It just has, I know when I fed them last off the top of my head. Now, every single bin is a Dymo labeler is my friend. Every single bin is labeled with exactly what is in it, its locality, its generation, its birth date, exactly where the animal was collected or its parents were collected, and it's in front of me every single time I look at every bin. So I don't have to go and refer to some sort of record keeping folder or anything like that. Everything is in front of me at all times. I don't have to refer back to that in any sort of way. The primary records that I keep in any form other than a feeding record for individually kept things like the rat snakes, which is literally just masking tape on each cage.
Yeah.
That's where I keep it. Is I literally at the beginning of the season, so to speak, I take a blank piece of copy paper, I push it into the wall, just in my room where the bulk of the rats and all the water systems are, and it's literally just for me to record breeding related. I saw courtship, had egg, how many eggs, how many hatched, what day the first pip was, the ratio from that particular litter. If there's sort of notations like with, let's say, salt marsh snakes, where I can have various phenotypes with a single litter, I make notations of 3 reds, 4 blacks, that sort of a thing, so that I have a rough idea, so I can refer back to what that female with that pairing has been thrown. So I have a reference source to go back to. And then a lot of that information is still kept, like in regards to hatching and all that, is on the bins in future. For the future, particularly anything that gets kept, all that information is just marked in front of me every time I'm looking at any of the bins. So any of the other guys, like I have to work in the zoo field a long time and keeping meticulous records of every single thing that happened, every shed that happened, every feeding that happened, and every defecation. I found personally no value in having all that information for myself, and that reproductive cycling information and all that stuff was more important to me, because that if they're say that again.
That was Alexa.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. Oh, Bree, I don't know. So I learned, even while I was still in the zoo field, that most of that meticulous record keeping meant nothing to me. Most of it was in my head about what was going on with my animals, and that I didn't use that information. But I did use the breeding related stuff, because that affects those feeding habits and the defecation cycles and all that sort of stuff more than anything. Now, if you have some species that I don't eat these days, and chondros and stuff like that, those defecation cycle, notations and stuff like that maybe has a little bit more value. I don't work with stuff, I mean, I got water snakes that defecate 8 times a day, so I don't have any use of any of that sort of information. They just poop all the time, and the rat snakes are really absolutely no different. So it's nice actually with all these python bows behind me, because I have to clean these like once or twice a month, because we just don't eliminate like all the other guys. It's almost like a treat working with these guys. So very simplistic record keeping. It's all very physical. When somebody asks me about some relation of something they got from me years ago in relation to what I'm now, I may not know exactly. I may know off the top of my head if it's somebody I'm close to, like if Jake asks me something, or Aaron asks me something, I know what they got off me, and I know what. I'll just say, did you save your deli cup lid, and do you have the hatch date? Because if they can give me the hatch date, I can very quickly go back to my records and know exactly what was involved with that breeding, size of litters, success of all that stuff. So it's all there. It's just in a more simple school, written with a pen on a sheet of paper, and then all those are just stacked up together that I can grab on a dime and refer back to it easily.
Fair enough.
Cool. Josh?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of a combo between Bree and Chris. I use like blue painter's tape, as funny as that sounds, on every tub, but for us, just with the way things go, basically what I'll do is, like, upon a new arrival, put a piece of, like, label the cage with what's in it. Obviously if there's any issues or whatever, I'll mark that as well. And then I'll go through when I feed everybody. If a snake doesn't eat, I just put like a little X on the label, so I know like that animal hasn't eaten yet. I won't do that if the animal's super deep in shed when I feed or something like that. Like if there's a designated reason it's not going to feed, I'm not going to, mark that it's a non-feeder yet. But then I'll go through, feed everybody. Once, like, let's say they don't eat the first attempt and then they do the second attempt, I just scribble out the X, and then I know that animal's good to go. I'll put a little check mark. Once I know they've fed consistently for multiple weeks and they're ready to be sold. So everything will have a check mark that's ready to go. And then for my breeder stuff, everything is more recorded than like the stuff that's just being bought to be resold. And so, like, I will put hatch dates or lay dates on every cage as well. I tend to not like hold too steady to like dates. Like I don't really care, if she laid on July 2nd last year and July 14th this year, like that doesn't really make a huge difference to me. Just with being in Michigan, our weather is kind of different in cycles differently every year. So like my breeding season is different every year. So I'm not holding these animals to like I have to pair them at this time, or I have to do this with them at this time. I'm going based off of the behaviors I see and when I feel that it's an appropriate time to be ready. Like we had a late winter this year. So like my tegus are just now about to get paired up. And last year they've been together for a month and a half at this point. So, it's just kind of just depends on the weather here and how they brumate and all of that. So I'm going a lot more based on just their behavior. But as far as the record keeping goes, anything that's bred here, obviously we'll have the hatch date, and then any animals I get that come with that information, I'll write that right on there too. Like right on the cage. Hatched this day from this breeder, blah blah blah. Just kind of the basic information that a customer would want.
Cool.
So,
Makes sense.
yep.
All right. Well, that was great. How about you, Clint? Why
So
don't you do the index card conversation?
I will. I will say I've been so historically. We were always very lax on the record keeping when it came to the adults. It was pretty much tell me when if they're not eating, you know what I mean, and let's figure it out. Or if there's regurgitation, or if there's anything wrong. If it's eating, then we're good, and we just the one thing I would say that we tracked, and it's not that we necessarily tracked, we just marked, was that first shed post brumation, because of the trigger that it did for a lot of the breeding things. Now that has shifted. We've started to grow with better record keeping on feeding. It's the same thing. I've never in my life kept defecation records, and I don't really see myself ever doing that. I remember when my twins were born 5 weeks premature, so they come home as preemies. They had some health issues in the beginning, and we had to keep these logs every time that these babies pooped. And we had those things for months in the beginning. And I remember messing with the wife saying, like, how long are we going to keep these stupid things? These boys are going to be 20 years old. And I'm like, oh, look, on February 12th at 12:22 p.m., you pooped, because I've still got documentation of it. But anyways, so never going to do that. So we're getting better at it, because I think I'm seeing the show is why I think tracking that data is probably going to help me see some things, that I may have overlooked. Because again, once the collection's this big, like right now, when Montross was talking about looking at a snake and knowing so much about it, I used to be able to do that. When it was my hands on it every day, my hands on the tub every day, with that snake room being my zen place. And, I could do the same thing, but not so much anymore. That's different. So I think that, we've continued to improve what we're doing when it comes to the record keeping in the collection, but it's not quite where we want it to be. It's more like, spreadsheet checking things off to make sure they ate, to report problems. Now the nursery, on the other hand, different story. That's where, those are the nursery, as well as any animals that come into the facility. We are hardcore on our tracking on that. Still not monitoring poops. Still not, unless there's something wrong with the poop. We'll note a nasty poop. But it's because we want to have the right number of meals in it, before it gets sold to the public. We're keeping track whether or not it's eaten live or frozen thawed, because that's an inevitable question from a lot of individuals. We also, because even though we may have a minimum number of meals, consecutive meals that we want a species to have before we sell it, we may also look at that card and say, okay, yeah, it's had 5 meals consecutively, but it was spotty for 3 months before that. Let's go ahead and get 5 more in it before we're comfortable, moving it on because of its history. Little things like that. But then, as far as the note cards, like you said, green and blue, you guys can probably guess what that means. That's the first thing. Everything has not only a unique ID number, but the ID number actually tells us things about the animal, tells us where it came from, the year it was born, the clutch within that year, and then the number each animal has a number within that clutch number, and then ending with an M or an F, so male or female. I don't really see us getting away from the index card system in the nursery because we utilize those cards for signals as well. Not just the data, but where we put those cards and how we turn them in the racks tells us something that's going on with that animal. Like, okay, we've gone through and we fed frozen thawed. Well, all of them that have the card on the right-hand side now refuse their frozen thawed and need a live. Okay, now we've gone through and we fed live. The ones that have the card turned this way upside down have had the meals they're supposed to have and need their picture taken so that they can be posted and sold. So it's the fact that it serves so many purposes on top of the data that's on the card. I don't really see us changing the nursery anytime soon, but the collection, I think we're going to continue to move in the direction of more data collection, as time goes on.
Cool. Record keeping for me, I used to be, about 5 years ago, I was nutty when it came to this. I am a paper data sheet guy who just recently has accepted that this little black box in my hand is more than just a device to talk to people with, and it's actually got technological advancements that might make me a better reptile keeper. Hence the reason why I'm forcing myself to do the Husbandry Pro. My system is very primitive, which is kind of fun. This is for for my home collection. At the university, we have this stuff called animal care software. We have plenty of people there that are putting in all the data. We don't track poops, Clint. So there you go. We do track sheds. We track feedings. We track going into brumation, out of brumation. We track when we pair animals, and then we track when they lay eggs, how many eggs, and then how long it takes for the eggs to hatch. That's all done electronically. For me here at the house, it's kind of funny the way that I do things now. It's way more primitive than people thought might think. I go to this reptile show. It's the something Pittsburgh Bonanza reptile show, and they give me a calendar every year in a grab bag, and I just have that calendar by the rat freezer. And when I feed, I X out the date, and that's just because when I get super busy with life, I get to a point where I'm like, did I feed them last week? Did I not feed them last week? When did they get fed last? And I have to keep that. I tried tracking it in a Google Calendar. I heard somebody do that. It didn't work. So it's just old school. It's right there on the fridge. And then the other thing I do is if anything happens that's weird in the collection, I take a picture of it. I have so many disgusting snake crap photos on this phone. If someone picked it up and just went through it, they would be like, what the hell? And I try to get a picture of the name. I use the blue tape too, Josh. So you got the turds and the blue tape name, and it's an art getting all that into a photograph, by the way. But it's time stamped. So I know what day that happened. I know who it happened with. So that's a thing that I do. In recent years, last 2 years, I was just putting snakes together, and I wasn't writing down the date they went together. I was using the photograph system, and I kind of realized I need to tighten up the ship a little bit. Hence the reason why Husbandry Pro is in my immediate future. And then anybody does anything weird, I take pictures of the evidence of the weirdness with the snake in it, and I basically am relying on that. Why do I do it this way? You might think the data guy would be so data-minded. I have to track data in everything in my life, and I want a simple system that I can use to kind of keep tabs on what is going down. As far as eggs, every single clutch, I take a picture of mom on the eggs with the name so I can go to the photograph. When they hatch, I take a picture of the babies hatching with the name of the clutch so I know, lay date, hatch date. And then I get much more serious with keeping tabs of individuals when it comes to the babies, because I want to make sure they're eating. I want to make sure they're eating consistently. I keep track of anything that's going a little weird and wonky, so the babies get a lot more. But one thing is I have a couple animals that are stunted, and I was I want to know if they're growing, like, and I realize that when I look at the damn snakes 2 times a week, every week, I kind of lose track of whether you're growing or not. And so that's one of the main reasons why I want to get a little bit more, with the data collection. So I will probably be talking to you, Bree, when this is all over, because it's on the phone. I have an account. I just haven't had any time to do anything with it. So
just whatever you do not try to set everything up on a phone. You will lose your mind. Definitely use a computer.
This desktop is where I will be doing that. Or my laptop that I can take into the garage. So
I use my phone for like the quick, easy scans, but other than that, definitely use a laptop.
No, laptop will be down there. I've read many Reddit posts that said the same thing. So, okay, so routine's done. I sent out a bunch of questions.
And before we move to the next, I think we've done our kind of the data collection. I think we're going to be moving into more of our husbandry routines now, which really is going to be the meat of the show. So. As we're moving into that, we want to give a shout out to ZoomEd, who sponsors, the deep dive into what we're going over. So if you do not mind, Max, let's hear from ZoomEd.
CCR is proud to be sponsored by ZoomEd Laboratories.
ZoomEd has been servicing the reptile industry since 1977. And in 1993, they introduced us to the Reptisot, the very first UVB bulb specifically for reptiles.
In addition to boasting a 1,200-item product line, ZoomEd also has an extensive reptile breeding program, with many species being kept at their incredible greenhouse facility located in California.
Thank you, ZoomEd, for supporting Colubrid and Colubrid Radio.
Thank you so much for your support, ZoomEd.
Awesome. So with that being said, thank you, ZoomEd. Let's jump into husbandry. So we're not going to be able to get through all the questions, and I'm certain we'll do another routine roundtable again. One of the questions I want to get into is the cleaning aspect, because that's the main part that we do with a routine. So when it comes to cleaning, I've heard people make reference to like, I put eyes on every animal every day. I make sure it has clean water every day. I poop scoop every day. I've also heard people say I look at them like every 3 to 4 days, clear them out then. I've also heard people say once a week. Before we dive into this, I want to say something. There's actually you might think every single day getting in there and mucking around might be the best. There's a paper. It's not a paper. It's an abstract, but I've talked to the person who did the study at St. Louis Zoo, and they tracked stress levels in snakes, and they had snakes on substrate that had, that they crapped on, obviously. One treatment group, they pulled the poop out every single day. The other treatment group, they left it in there for 3 to 4 days, and they were only interacting with the snakes like every 3 to 4 days. And then they looked at corticosterone levels, which is your stress hormone. And they found out that the extreme cleaning regime caused way more stress based off the corticosterone levels than the leaving poo in there for a day or two and getting it and giving the snakes their piece. Now, I know someone's going to listen to what I just said and be like, he's saying leave the poop in there. I'm not saying that.
A lot of poop this episode.
There is, man. It's routine. But with that being said, there is something to be said about overdoing the cleanliness. That's all I'm getting at here. So with that being said, we'll go Bree, we'll go Chris, we'll go Josh. What is your cleaning regime over? We'll just say over a day and over a week. Like, what do you do?
So, because we have so many things going on, as far as the colubrids go, it depends whether they're in an enclosure or they're in a rack.
Okay.
If they're in an enclosure, they can get away from the poop, and if it sits there one day, it is going to be okay, and I'll get it the next. I don't like leaving feces long-term in with the racks. Hognose they shit nonstop. So Tuesday to Thursday is I spot clean the hognose every single one of those days. And then usually they're good until I'll check them again on Sunday. Everything else, I don't find the red-tailed rats, the cave racers. I don't find any of those guys are anywhere near as messy. I don't like bothering them at all. They're a higher stress species. If I can avoid bothering them, I won't. Hognose don't seem to really care. They just think every time is feeding time. But I like to keep everything that is in a bin as clean as I can keep it, as long as it's not a species that I know bothering it constantly is going to cause me a ton of problems. Baby white lip python, not great to open the bin every day. But in that sense, it's water dishes are making sure they're clean, spot cleaning if I see feces in there, trying to make sure I'm not cross-contaminating between different racking systems. We have a quarantine rack, we have an adult rack, and we have a hatchling rack. They all are kept separate. And it gives me a chance to just check on them and monitor them. I don't like them cruising around over top their poop. But yeah, if it's in an enclosure, I will make sure they have clean, fresh water, and I will avoid it. Most our enclosures are fully bioactive. Doesn't mean that there's no maintenance with a bioactive, but they will survive if it's there a little bit. But if there's a big poop in there, I'll take it out once a week. Isopods usually clean up sheds and stuff. But yeah, there's still maintenance with the bioactives. It's just not as frequent, especially for more stretched species like the Gonyosoma and stuff. I don't like bothering them. So it's kind of how we do it here.
Cool. Montross?
Depends on this. Mine is based more on feeding protocols and the species involved. Like Bree just brought up, like white lips. You want to know how often I go in my white lip cages over here? Yeah. Once a week, every other week. Most of it's just walking by looking at a water bowl, right? Water bowl's clean, or they crapped in it. I'm going to open the cage and change the water bowl, right? I've got some species of rat snakes and water snakes that I have to, and really most of all the water snakes, I have to at least look at their cages for their water bowls every day. Having said that, most of that is not necessarily opening the cage. It's just I run a flashlight in front of a lot of the adult cages, and the water bowls, the water tubs are sitting right up front, and so I could just flashlight into everybody and just see if they've defecated. I have a few species, particularly my Neurodeorombifer, which are probably the most dirty, vile things I've ever kept. I've never. They will literally just in whatever the different in the bins. They literally will just hide in there, defecate all inside there, and just stay in there. So I do a lot of pull-ins for sniff tests and general sniff tests in the room, but a lot of that is the feeding and cleaning is in a rotation of itself. Like I'll usually go through and feed like all adult rats one, and then I'll go through and feed all juvenile baby rats one day, and I'll go through and feed all adult waters one day, plus or minus babies that or another. Kind of depends on time of the year and breeding and that sort of stuff. And so I can't go I go at about 48 hours, 72 hours at the most. I've got to get in there and start cleaning rats, particularly the breeder rats. All those guys, those adult snakes are defecated within 48 hours and in custody. So they're all getting water snakes that really they just never stop. So that's on at least twice a week, like every 3 days, no matter what. And this time of year, particularly with a lot of gravid females, a lot of babies, most of the waters, except for a lot of the males, are getting fed just about twice a week right now anyway. So the python, it's even with a lot of the gravid sandboas and stuff like that, they're still like, actually on them once a week. I leave them alone. And our whole the collection is still a very leave it alone. Like I'm a very hands off, set the cage up right, give them lots of hide options, and just don't bother anybody any more than I absolutely have to. But because I cohab everything, very few cages are single animal cages. It just creates a lot of waste, and that creates odor and the flies. I'm in the South, so Florida flies are just a nightmare. So I mean, they're attacking for sheds just because the sheds are wet. So it's I spend more of my time just trying to keep things clean so that the flies aren't in the cages. But leave them alone mentality. So it's twice a week on the big rats, once a week on juvenile rats, baby rats, and water snakes are at least twice a week. But it's as minimal as I can get away with ultimately.
Okay. Thank you.
Josh?
Yeah, I guess my approach is probably a lot different than everybody else's, and like I'll say this, like we'll just stay focused on like my import of colubrids for this podcast sake. That way we're not diving into the 500 other things that are going on here. So for me, like I'm setting up pretty much everything, or not pretty much everything. I'm setting up everything that is coming in to be resold eventually on paper towel. So that also means that my cleaning schedule is very intense. Because one of the advantages to bedding is that like it can absorb more and kind of be a bit dirtier, and you can get away with it. When everything's on paper towel, like if they poop on paper towel, it's wet and it's gross. So every like especially the hatching racks are guaranteed getting gone through every single day. Anybody who poops is getting cleaned. Regardless, I do see the stress side of that argument, but I would challenge that and say like I haven't ever had an animal stop eating or anything like that because the cages are being cleaned daily at times. The older animals are typically every day as well. I might be able to get away with every other day, but even boas and pythons are all getting opened, looked at. Waters are getting changed if they're dirty, and paper towel is getting changed if it's dirty. I have just such a different like experience keeping because there is so much coming and going that the the thought of me even just being like, yeah, I'll just check on them like in a few days, like just doesn't fly here. We just can't. Everything has to be monitored so close because I'm essentially getting a new collection every couple weeks. You know what I mean? And it's not that my turnover is that big, but like, on an average week, like there's weeks I might have 70 new animals here. And so it's like those animals all need my dramatic attention immediately because I need to make sure they're okay. The breeder room stuff is all set up bioactive, and that's been super weird to not really have to like babysit that stuff so much. It's kind of like, oh yeah, they're just fine in there. So that's been cool. But yeah, no, we're cleaning an exceptional amount here, and that's just one of the things that I think has kind of helped us be successful with the business is that keeping the cleanliness up keeps the disease, keeps the pathogens, keeps all of that under control. And for us being able to monitor everything too, like is something pooping an excessive amount. I know that's funny, but I've seen that happen where snakes are just like, if they're defecating every single day, with the exception of like, a hog nose or like a species that's known for that, there's a problem. Like they shouldn't be pooping every day, like there's something to be watching there. Or if they're not pooping enough, and all of that can be monitored really easily because I'm doing it every day. But yeah, no, breeder stuff is set up where I can go a day or two, but I'm super, 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 super anal about waters. Every water gets pulled, wiped out with a paper towel, refilled, and put back. And that being said, a lot of times, like I just have probably 600 little tiny ceramic water dishes that I use for the hatchlings. And so, like, if they've pooped in it, like I just wash the water bowl and put a fresh one in. There's no point to me to like risk the contamination of a virus or something like that through a water bowl. And knock on wood, that's worked really, really well for us. But yeah, that's sort of it here. There's not really any like I wouldn't say there's any weekly maintenance here. It's daily maintenance.
Yeah. I'd have to say I'm right there with Josh, on this particular one. I think and also because the sizes and what we're doing here is probably a lot more similar. I like to have eyes on the animals, not mine per se, but eyes on the animals every day as well. And it's part of it is forward flies. I want to limit that as much as I possibly can. So I want everything spot cleaned every day. That's kind of one of our minimums. Now I'm going to share a screen here, and this is going to go further than obviously just what we're talking about, but there's not any one point where, this would come up, but I guess I want to show kind of what we do. I say this is what you guys are looking at here is Corey's job. This massive, spreadsheet here. And what we do is we've broken it down into all the things that get done in each of our different species rooms. In this, you can see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're closed on Sundays. Now, obviously, a lot of this isn't going to apply to most, like emails. You're going to see emails throughout the day that are on this checklist, and that's where it's a reminder for Corey to go check, the emails to see if there's, potential sales, whatever. I also want to explain this because this is the order in which this gets done each day. When it says clean non-snake Q1, that's actually not our quarantine animals. Steve takes care of quarantine animals, so it's not like Corey's going and cleaning the quarantine and then dealing with the rest of the collection. No, what Corey takes care of in what we're calling Q1 right there are basically what we would consider like our back stock animals that we take to shows. So where we keep our frogs in the back room, where we keep leopard geckos, crested geckos, all that is, the extras are off the floor. And that's where she starts her day. So Pat, once we're past her making shipping labels, packaging animals, we even have what days she starts to warm up thawed animals. Now you'll see where that's like on a Tuesday over here because it's blocked out on Monday. That's because down here towards the bottom on Monday, you'll see where they move frozen rodents to the refrigerator, because that way when they come in on Tuesday, they're cold, but they're thawed. And then they start warming, so little things like that. But so anyways, it's goes step by step. Unpair, they start in the ball python room. Unpair ball python, spot clean ball python room, mist. AN means as needed. Temp check ball room, vacuum ball room. Then they move to the southwest room and they repeat all of those steps. Unpair, that means on Mondays, if they've been paired all week and we're separating to feed, you separate on Mondays. So each one of those is done bit by bit, as you go through. Let's see. Now if you notice you have grays and different colors here, that's because we don't do everything every day. And I think that's probably what most are going to say. There's certain things they do on certain days, of the week. That's their routine. So I missed ball python. That's on Mondays and Fridays. So she doesn't have to worry about that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Saturday. There's 2 days a week that she's misting them if needed. You guys will also notice, if you're seeing this, that there's color codes. On Monday here, from emails all the way down to when she has to do emails again, that's one color. That's pink. Then you'll see another big chunk is green, blue, and then this kind of purplish. That's because if you see down here at the bottom, we have times. Basically, that tells Corey all of this right here should be done by 11 a.m. So it helps her know if she's on point for her day, if she's running behind, if she's running ahead, things like that. Changing waters. Now, we change waters as needed, as we clean. If something's, crapped in its water, of course, that's getting taken care of. But whether they've crapped in it or not, they're all getting fresh water on Thursdays. Things like that, but not having to worry about it through the week. They feed different rooms on different days. You also get second feedings, for some things on a day. Like I said, it's even down to the point of full bedding changes. Now, everything's not getting a full bedding change, but the full bedding changes we're doing that week happens on Saturdays. So it's all kinds of little stuff, but this is something Corey and I sat down and built together. And, we adjust it as needed. Sometimes if we figure out, okay, we're always done by 10 a.m. with all this stuff. Okay, then the colors change, to tell us this should be done by 10. Or I've not been done by 11 o'clock with this since we've tried it. It's always, maybe 12. Okay, we adjust it up a little bit. So it's not something for me to go back there and beat Corey over the head if she's not, hitting this certain timeline. But what it is it helps us know how we're running that day. And then it also helps Corey whenever she gives this to someone else, as far as you'll notice on Wednesday, there's different colors. And that's because that's usually Corey's day off. And so she assigns this to interns and assigns it to others. But it helps her understand, yes, this is the timeline. And so if they're not meeting that timeline, then, we need to figure out why. What is there more training or anything like that? But basically, like I said, I just want to pop this up because
Cool.
It's the easiest way for me to truly explain, here's what we're doing, each day or it's weekly. Check eggs in the incubator once a week. We're actually opening the lid on every container in the incubator to see, has something gone bad? Is something shrinking in that we don't have enough humidity? Are the eggs looking like they're a freaking balloon because we've got it too humid? We need to air some out. So it's all the little things that need to be done, taking care of the collection, and we broke it down into when it should be, and it helps us keep on point. We don't miss anything this way.
Clint, can I just ask a quick question for you? Because like you're managing a pretty large collection as well. With your collection, like your breeder stuff, how are you handling the water situation? Because I know you're saying like on Thursdays everything gets fresh water, then you're spot cleaning. When you say like fresh water, are they just wiping out a bowl, or are you giving like are you using like plastic cups, or what's your
Plastic?
protocol?
Yeah, we toss them.
That's
we're
what
using
we're doing here too. Yep.
I think they're the 16 ounce. Does that sound right? The
Yeah,
ones that
same
fit in
thing
like
here.
the ARS cup holders.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're getting those, and then we also, that applies in the nursery as well. And Josh, I don't know if you saw that, but the cup holders that Andrew has designed that Metazotics is selling now, basically it's the same thing that like the cup holders do in the ARS racks. They're perfect for 2 ounce water dishes. So if you're doing a bunch of baby colubrids, and you know how they spill their water all the time in their tubs, this is night and day difference with that. But yeah, that's what we'll do is if there's anything messy in there through the week, it's just, they have a bucket that stays in that room with that cart, and they can dump anything nasty, in that bucket. The only time that bucket leaves is to go straight outside to get dumped and to get washed. So we're not carrying that bucket that may have feces in it to another room and continuing to do that. We used to, I'm completely throw it out there, be honest, but we've continued to try to up level our biosecurity from one room to another. And that was one of the changes that we made. And then, like I said, on Thursdays, and part of the reason that I wanted this done on Thursdays was the water here is very, very hard. It's you got real crust going all the way around, the water bowls, things like that. Now, that problem may go away with the system we're using now with the reverse osmosis that just came in. But it's one where I just felt that even though a water bowl looks clean, there's stuff swimming in it after a week,
No,
and
for sure. And that's honestly like the number one way that's one of the number one things I tell people when they start building a bigger collection is like your water bowls are your worst enemy. And as much as I hate just like throwing out those plastic bowls every week, it is the only way to manage it, or the safest way to manage it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's, I think it's the safest way. And it's not to say that anyone who is using, other water bowls or washing them out completely, makes it, great at these numbers, because I've even tried to put them in the dishwasher and they, just warp and all that. Because if I can save them, let's save them. And, but I looked at it more as even the, like Zach, you're mentioning the stress levels, of the snakes from being open every day. I can't help but feel like, I'd rather give a little bit of stress than a whole lot of death. So that's kind of why at this level, we want to try to keep them as clean as we possibly can. So, and I also will say, Josh, so the collection's kept on bedding. However, the nursery is same, kept on paper towels for that same reason, because with bedding, you still leave residue behind. And, for a hatchling rack, that's a small container. You know what I mean? There's just, you're asking, for problems. So we kept everything on paper towels as well. That way, all those tubs can be wiped out and actually put in the dishwasher routinely. And I think that that's done wonders for keeping the health, of that room with as many animals that, we have in there at any given time. So.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed with that too, not to just like kind of go off on a little tangent, but when I'm keeping the hatchlings on, or the baby snakes on paper towel, if I have a non-feeder, being able to add bedding or like add more to their enclosures seems to be a good trigger to stimulate them eating if they are stressed out. So I try to keep everything just as basic as I possibly can. If I can get them established and solid that way, and this is more for the wild caught stuff, but if I can get them established at the most simplistic form, I can always add more later and they tend to do really well. But if they don't establish really easy, I now have the option to add bedding, add more hides, add more branches, add a different water bowl. Like I can add all of those things and
Right.
potentially stimulate them to feed. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's and it's funny you say that. And then I have the next question ready, just so everybody knows. To your exact point, there are some of the babies in the nursery that we've added some bedding to, and it's very few. It's things like bamboo rats, the Porphyracea. Some of them do great on paper towels, but there seems to be a good number of them that it's like, you know what? As soon as you throw bedding in there, they're fine. Then they're like, okay, I'll go ahead and keep eating. Mandarin rats, I don't ever put them on a paper towel. As long as there's something we produced, they go straight in a deli cup, set up with substrate right off the bat because they eat so much better when I do it that way. So, yeah, you're right. You have that ability to add new things.
Yeah, all of those species, like my bamboos and my mandarins and like the Japanese forest rats and stuff, they all have a deli cup of damp sphagnum moss. Same thing. I can just toss it out if they poop in it or whatever. But same thing. Yeah, I give them the opportunity to burrow themselves in there because it's just the best way to get them feeding.
Does wonders. So I guess my next question for everybody is we were, as far as cleaning, we talked about like kind of our daily and weekly routines. As far as substrate as a whole, what triggers a full substrate change for you? Is that something you schedule? Is that something okay, this just smells like poop now and I can't even see poop, so it's time? What makes you say it's time for me to dump the whole tub, scrub it out, and refill it? Start with you, Bree.
I guess for me, I could say it's based on vibes. Because I'm a very anxious person. So I really do come in here and I just stare at everything as often as I can. I color code stuff. I scribble on containers. I visually need to see it. So I check on the bedding. Because I spot clean so often and I use for the racking systems, I use hemp bedding, which is extremely absorbent and clumps really nice. And compared to when I used wood chips and aspen, does not seem to like get disgusting as fast. So I'm able to do like the smaller the bin, the more frequently it gets changed. Like baby bins are getting changed constantly because there's barely anything in it. Versus I keep the adult hognose in like the Vision 70 tubs. Usually I can get away a little bit longer. But it really is not like a scheduled thing. It's me going through it, spot cleaning it, and then being like, okay, this is no good anymore. We're tossing it. We're doing a full sterilization, replacing it with all fresh bedding. Bioactives, it depends as well because the more humid it is, the more you mist, the more the substrate can get really soggy. But because it's a bioactive, the process of that is more like we're going to remove 50% of the substrate, put 50% fresh substrate back in. I did start with aquatics, and I think of bioactives a lot like aquariums. So we kind of treat the bioactive enclosures a lot like an aquarium, where if it starts becoming stagnant, we freshen it back up, but not remove everything and start from like square one. Unless I notice it's like really bad. For some reason, my substrate mix was off and it's sopping wet, soggy, ammonia ridden. It's got to go like right away. I think that's kind of like the gist of it. Quarantine stuff gets changed pretty regularly. If I have papers, it's changing every single day. I use butcher paper for some of the species that need to go clean and sterile. It saves me a lot of money on paper towels. But yeah, that's, I guess, if that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, they swap positions up here, so I'm going to jump over. Montross?
Mine is based off of just look and smell. So many of my guys are very different defecation habits and routines. I got a lot of waters that virtually never defecate on the substrate and only defecate in their water bowls, and other ones that just defecate everywhere all the time. So it's really just the color of the shavings tint changes, and there's an odor that's just beyond a fresh poop in there. So that elicits full breakdown and haul it outside and clean it. Juvenile water snakes are in groups of between 2 and usually a dozen, so those guys are getting changed out a lot more frequently in full breakdowns. Sometimes every other week they're getting full breakdowns, depending on how many's in the bin. And then I've got certain big giant bins that like Gulf hammock rat snakes and diamondback water snakes that are just horribly messy animals that those big bins get probably yanked out of there every other month and fully broken down. So it really, and then other snakes that like just never, like I might break them down fully once a year because they just don't ever make a mess enough to warrant a full breakdown. So it's a feel by feel on every single group, and with everything being cohab, there's usually 2 or 3 animals in every bin. So it really just depends on an adult diamondback water snake has 4 times the mass of a rat snake of the same size. So is a lot messier animal when it comes down to it. So certain animals just get cleaned way more often than others, just because of their biology, essentially. So,
yeah,
Cool.
but
sense.
spot cleaning every time I open a cage if needed. It's just depends on what cages I'm opening and what I'm doing at that time.
Josh?
Yeah, so I was just counting in my head while you guys were chatting. I have a total of 6 snake cages that have substrate in them. So I guess I'm not really the best one to weigh in on this. Obviously like all the lizards are on substrate, but literally everything is kept on paper towels here. But yeah, as far as those 6 go, I don't really think I have a set time. It's just kind of like, that looks dirty, let's swap it out,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like maybe monthly, something like that. I'm pretty anal about the cages and being clean and everything like that. I don't worry as much about like if a snake sheds, sometimes I'll just leave it in there for a little while, especially if they're paired up, because I've noticed leaving sheds in will actually like stimulate breeding at times.
Yeah.
So like right now, like my Dumerose boas are together for like 7 or 8 months out of the year. I just leave them together pretty much all the time. And so if they shed, I won't pull that out right away. Like I just leave that in there. But any feces is getting spot cleaned anytime they poop. So pretty much daily. And then, yeah, I guess like a full substrate change, maybe monthly.
Yeah, we're on roughly about an 8-week schedule, I think. Is kind of, we do so many racks or cages, and it's usually about 8 weeks is I think what most of them are getting gone through. One thing I want to say, because then Zach, I want to ask you how, same thing for you, but I think hopefully we all agree, and I just want to put this out there for those who are listening. All of us that spot clean, I don't know about you, but when I do a full bedding change, it's amazing how dirty the bottom of that tub really is. And so my whole point is we can spot clean every day and think things are great, but you're going to be surprised how much caked on stuck crap is on the bottom of that once you dump all the bedding out, where it's seeped down there, or they were burrowed down when they crapped and you didn't even know it. It just goes to show that, like I said, there's always this residual that's left over whenever we're spot cleaning. So
just to like what I've noticed since I switched to the hemp bedding, I don't get that anymore, like ever. My bins are pretty clean when I dump them out. So that's a change I noticed, because I used to use the aspen like shavings. I'm very allergic to aspen and wood shavings since I've learned that. But since I switched over to the hemp bedding, I don't get that like gross cakiness at the bottom anymore. If we dump the bins, it's might be a couple tiny spots in a couple of the bins. And as far as hognose go, I would call hognose a very messy snake. I notice the bins are overall a lot cleaner when I dump them out.
Interesting.
Can you talk about that hemp bedding a little bit? Like how is it for
I've never
humidity
even
and
seen
stuff like
it.
that? Yeah, I haven't either. I'm interested.
Well, thankfully, like the one pro of Canada is where
I would say
the
you
leading
Canadians.
producer,
Yeah.
the leading producer of hemp products. And because I guess maybe 5 years ago, I discovered I thought I was allergic to my snakes, and I was like, there's no way I'm allergic to the snakes. And then I discovered I was actually allergic to like aspen specifically. And when I used the hardwood chips, the hardwood bedding, the supplier I used started mixing aspen in with those chips as well. So I became all like allergic to all the beddings I used. So I went on a tangent looking for the best alternative. I tried the what is it, the paper bedding like that you use for
Yes.
like small
hate
rodents
it.
and stuff. The smell that came off of that was horrific. And it was just so dusty. I tried newspaper and the butcher paper, like I said. Hognose, I've noticed like insane amounts of stress when you keep them on paper. They don't stop pacing, they scrape, and it depressed me so much. So that was like a no-go. And then I decided to give like hemp kitty litter a try. And these are like the standard like pellets that you would get for like cat litter. Real chunky, not super great. Then I tried chicken hemp bedding. So these are chips, kind of like aspen shavings. They're just kind of like wood chips. And I did a test. The first time was I took the cup of my aspen bedding and I took the cup of the hemp bedding, and we poured water as if a snake had just dumped their whole water bowl right into it. We filled it into the bin, and then we poured like a whole water bowl into it. The aspen sat there. It got wet. It got smelly. It got moldy, and it was all the way through, and there's still sitting moisture and water at the bottom. Versus the hemp, it absorbed the whole thing, didn't get moldy, no smell, and you could literally like cut and take it all out, and there was nothing on the bottom, like completely dry, brand new, like you never did anything before. Every single hognose in this room can take a shit at the same time, and the smell is not there like it used to be with the other bedding. So I will say, like, if I had to switch to something else, I just wouldn't. Like, I will only ever use this from now on because it's just been a life changer.
It's for chickens?
It's for chickens and horses. They make a small pet version. The chips are slightly smaller, but you pay a premium for it being small pets. But you can get like giant bales of the chicken stuff for cheap here. There's one producer in the US. They were Canadian. They moved to the US. I've told a few hognose people this, and they've purchased the hemp bedding now, and they're all over it because it's been a life changer for me. Has saved countless hours scrubbing things.
I might have to get that.
Somebody has
Googling
humidity.
hemp right now.
last year.
It's interesting.
Cool.
There was a vendor at Daytona last year with some. It must have been somewhere nearish me or between me and the door on the way out because I don't really get to walk around. But somebody had a booth with hemp bedding last year in the big room.
It's fantastic. Like, you can mist it if you need to mist it, and you don't have to worry about it going like awful like the wood shavings do. And there's just no smell. It basically never molds unless you let it sit there wet forever and ever. But even then, I still haven't seen it mold, because obviously the hognose will spill their water right into it. But yeah, I guess if Tractor Supply has it, I'd give it a shot. If you have something that's like a more dry needing species and you're using aspen, it's been a total game changer for us, and I don't want to ever switch back.
Oh,
Spot cleaning is literally like you can just grab it into like a full pile all the way to the bottom, nothing underneath.
that's cool.
Gonna have to look.
I'm
into
going
that.
to Tractor for something else tomorrow, so I will definitely be seeking that stuff out. All right. My routine, I actually learned from a guest on CCR, Shane Wooldridge, was on. He had a very diverse collection back in the day. And he just has a simple system where if a snake sheds, he does a full overhaul. So that, and I'm talking about here at the house, not at the school. So Colin and I, my son, he's my helper, if you will. And I needed to have some kind of mechanism where a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid would know when to do what if I'm away on a trip, because he's my eyes, and we do all of our husbandry on the weekend. So whenever an adult sheds, the whole thing gets taken outside, snake gets thrown in a bag, and then we scrub the tub if it's in a rack. This is for rack specifically. And then we put the substrate back in. I've had a couple people message me recently about substrate mulches or what I use. I just do two part cypress mulch, 1 part pine, 1 part aspen, and mix it all together. The cypress mulch is good for keeping the humidity up. I have a lot of Florida Kings. I have found personally that they don't they get the kind of crinkly, weird, dehydrated skin issues that king snakes can occasionally get if they're just on aspen. But cypress can get a little too gross if they flip a water bowl because it just kind of holds all the moisture. And I've just kind of played around. But that's a really easy, cheap mix. And then they're on that until they shed again. In the Vivaria, most of the naturalistic, it's just spot cleaning, like you wouldn't believe. And then once a season, at the beginning of the season, I do a complete overhaul in this room. It takes me about 4 nights to do all the vivs you see in here. And then when I pull the substrate out, because I've learned so much about crypto, when I clean a bin, everything gets sprayed down with 12% peroxide. I put it in those misters you can buy at like Petco, and it's great because you can basically coat the entire tub or the Vivaria. And I basically pull all the snakes out. I spray this stuff down, close the glass, and then I leave for an hour. That way the contact time is what it needs to be. And the cool thing about the peroxide is if you've got that caked up feces, it pulls it up off the bottom, and then you get a squeegee. You can basically make it squeegee clean, which is really nice. And then I will do the vivs outside of that season if I have ambitious poopers. So there was a time when I had indigo snakes in here, crebos in here, false water cobras in here, and hognose in here. And that's the closest my wife's come to saying no snakes in the house, because it just smelled like a snake's ass everywhere you went because of the depth, the sheer amount of fecal material. So now we don't do that anymore. That ratio of dipsadids will never be in this room again. But when that was happening, it was like every month and a half, everything. It was too much. So that's my routine. Cool. You're muted, Clint.
Sorry, somebody was calling at 8:20 on long after we closed. Sorry, guys. Do we want to move to feeding?
Yes,
kind of what everybody.
That'll be the last topic.
On feeding. All right. So, Bree, what does the feeding routine look like? Meaning, do you have a day, multiple days? Does it just depend on when the heck you are free that week, or kind of what's your your go-to when it comes to feeding the colubrids?
The colubrids, I have the day blocked off for Sunday. I still work a standard 9 to 5, and we do all of our cleaning and all of the other species in the room as like a regular weekday occurrence because there's so much going on. So besides the Sonora, the shovel nose, and the ground snakes, those get treated more like geckos and lizards. So their feeding regime is like every other day I'm giving them food. So I'll exclude them from that because everything else, I have the day blocked off for Sunday. It does not mean I'm feeding them every Sunday. I code through, I look at the animals. Does this need to be fed? Is this breeding? Is this maybe a bit too chunky? And I am very laxy-daisy with feeding. So breeding females will get fed quite a bit more. Breeding males, not really. I'll feed them a little bit through the spring, a little bit through the summer, cool it off, and I brumate everything every year as far as North American colubrids are. But it really is like taking it easy. I like to keep my snakes rather lean. I don't really want to push food into them. I'll switch up the sizes so it's not everyone gets a large mouse every feeding. Sometimes I may get a hopper, sometimes they may get something smaller. I really eyeball it, so to speak, but I have a day blocked off for Sunday. I have a big list of everything, and I go through each and every bin, every snake. You need to eat, urine shed, yada, 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 and I pull them out as I see fit to avoid the like stiff regime of you must feed them every few days. Even hatchlings, I don't feed more than once a week. It works for it works for me. I've always done even hognose hatchlings. I find they don't even have time to actually fully digest and pass the food they ate last week before I don't want to shove them with food again. So once a week at the most. I at minimum skip 1 week a month of feeding at the bare minimum.
Gotcha. Montross?
I feed very seasonally. Female breeding stuff, which a lot of the stuff is set up for breeding, is getting fed at least weekly. Sometimes, let's say every 5 to 9 days, kind of depending. Males are maybe getting fed every other week to once a month, depending on the individual male. That's at least in rat snakes. And then it depends on what I'm feeding. A lot of times a male will just get like a single chick or a single small mouse. Meanwhile, a female may get 4 chicks or 3 mice or something, depending on, I've got some rat snakes that are 6+ foot and others that are females that are, max out at 4 foot. So it just kind of depends on the individuals. Babies are getting fed every 5 to 10 days. A lot of my feeding is based off of life. We all got jobs, we all got responsibilities otherwise. So it's just like, I just pick like, okay, I haven't fed the adult rats in around a week, so I'm doing them. And so I will thaw out, 50 to 100 chicks or mice or whatever I'm happen to do. And I go through and I feed all those adults once I'm all done with it. And if I go, well, I didn't quite have enough, the next day, whoever didn't get fed in that round will get added to whatever gets fed the next day. And I just cycle kind of through that. Like right now, baby water snakes are getting fed about every 3 days because I've already got quite a few litters on the ground. Adult female water snakes are getting fed every 4 to 6 days. But some of those males in those cages are only getting fed every 3 or 4 weeks because they don't need it. They don't want it. They did their job. They wanted to eat a handful of good times in the spring, and then it's just like, give me a meal every couple weeks, and they stay at perfect weight. So a lot of it is just what I've got going on, how long my work day was. We got anything planned that evening, and then I just go through and I pick a group of animals for that day, and I feed those guys. Some of it has to be planned, particularly with thawing out food for the water snakes, because I can't fast thaw that stuff like you can chicks and mice and stuff. So I kind of have to plan that at least that morning with an intention. So it's all just kind of around work and life, but with a plan on a daily basis of feeding usually somebody, at least this time of year especially. So, but somewhere in that neighborhood.
Gotcha. Josh?
Yeah, I think I kind of feed similar to Bree as far as the snakes go. Usually like 3 weeks of the month I'm feeding. I always joke like there's no rat dispenser in the wild that goes, "Hey, buddy, it's Tuesday. Here you go." That doesn't happen ever. So this whole like feed them every 7 days at noon, otherwise they're gonna die is just not. That's just not true.
Yeah.
So the frogs get fed every day here. The lizards, this sounds funny, but the crocodiles tell me when it's time to feed the lizards because if I walk downstairs and they're hitting the lids, I know they're hungry, which means all the lizards are hungry. So that's usually every 2 to 3 days. And then the hatching snakes, I'm usually shooting for like once a week, and then I would say like I skip 1 week a month. The big snakes, I'll feed them pretty sparsely through winter. And then in the spring, I'll feed them heavy, get them ready for breeding season. I guess it depends on what season we're talking, like what we're cycling. But I tend to not feed more frequently for when I want them to start breeding. I'll start feeding bigger meals because I think that's one thing a lot of people kind of don't give credit to is like they feed them the same size meal or like what is quote unquote an appropriate sized meal every feeding, which is obviously fine. Like their health will stay the same, but like I said, there's no rat dispenser that goes, oh, this is the same width as the widest part of your body. Here you go. They're going to be rating whatever they can find. So sometimes like I have 3-foot colubrids that I'm feeding a fuzzy mouse to, and then the next week he's getting a weaned rat. Like I just kind of mix it up. And I'm super big on doing a variety of prey for a couple of reasons. Number one, their health. I think it's super beneficial for them to eat mice, rats, chicks, quail, whatever, frogs, anything they can eat. And also, too, one of the things I run into is like I'll have customers that hit me up and they're like, "Hey, I breed my own rats, You know, will he take a frozen thawed rat? Or, you know, if it's a baby snake, will he take a pinky rat instead of a pinky mouse? And I like to be able to say, yeah, sure, definitely. You know, like I fed them all of that here. And obviously some snakes are particular, but for the most part, I can get everything to eat everything. The only thing I don't offer is just software rats, just because I don't have a good supplier of them here and they're very expensive up here. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I don't really have like a set schedule. I try to shoot for Saturdays for the hatchlings, but like kind of whenever I feel like it. And if I walk downstairs and their nose in the front of their tubs, like, hey, bro, you forgot about us, then I'll feed them that day. You know, it just kind of depends. So
Cool.
Oh, Zach, what about you?
I do a couple things. I usually try to do a weekend day just because with the work, by the end of the day, I'm a little fried. One thing I want to talk about has something to do with feeding is making stupid mistakes. I do not interact with the cages if I've had a rough day at work. If I'm in full-blown absent-minded professor mode, I have to physically say out loud, my wife makes fun of me, like, no, because that's when I'm going to leave a tub halfway open. The one that I do all the time, which is just not all the time, too strong a word, is these stupid Vivs over here with the sliding glass. I'll slide it open. I'll get a water bowl. I'll go clean it out. I'll put the water bowl in, and I just walk away wide open for them to go where the hell they want. And I did that like 3 weeks in a row about 5 years ago. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? And I realized that there's a time to work with the animals and there's a time not to work with the animals. And I learned from listening to Venom Exchange radio, because a hognose snake getting loose is one thing, a bushmaster getting loose is a completely different thing. And they had a guy on there that was just talking about venomous etiquette and keeping, and they said, like, you're not focused, don't work that day. And I just brought that in from this hardcore viper keeper to my little hognose snakes, and it works out great. So and that also puts that routine off. And this is why I said that, because if I'm if we have a busy weekend, that's the weekend I don't. If I go off on a trip, that might be the week I don't feed. I do the same thing you guys do, which is kind of interesting. I usually pick a week in the summer where they don't get food, because the rat machine does not exist. Another thing that I'll do is I did this really dumb thing once, and I bought, I think it was 150 bags of small mice. I thought I was buying adult mice at a really good price, and they were small adult mice. So I have an overabundance of, I bought whatever, lots of them. And I will occasionally just thaw out a whole bag, and everybody, instead of getting mice or chicks that day, you get a whole bunch of small mice. And it's been really fun. The pits really like that. I just put a stack of like 6 small adult mice in there with my yearling pine snakes, and they go ham on it. So
Oreo cryptosis.
So that's a thing.
Love
and then
that.
Yeah. So I do completely different kind of thing. I have to be we have this right here, this mindfulness piece. I also use this as a form for me to kind of get centered. And when I get flow and I'm in a good mood, that's when I go down and I work with the animals. So I've become very aware of my mental state before I go and interact with the animals here, because it's usually at the end of the day. I was feeding the babies because I've kind of gotten on this kick. I've talked about it on the show where maybe they need to eat a little bit more than we think they do. And so I've been trying to get my yearling snakes, my 1 to 2 year old animals, I'm trying to get them fed a small to a moderate sized meal every 5 days. And so I've kind of broken the collection up, and Monday nights were a good night for me because I don't have much on Mondays last semester. And it was actually kind of nice. I'd go in, I'd work with the snakes, I'd think about the week. I'm focused at the same time. I'd feed the young that day, and then they get another feeding on Thursday, which was the other day of the week I could do that. And then I'm in the snake room on Sunday, and it kind of paced out everything nicely where I can get eyes on everyone. And I was able to pull that off the past 2 years, and that's kind of my system. The other thing I do, which has been a little bit difficult to get through all the students at West Liberty's Head, is every summer I pick a 2-week period of time and no one gets fed. because if you think about what's going on out in the wild, I'm writing the hognose snake book. There was a radio telemetered hognose snake that didn't move for 72 days because it got too hot. So, it's not eating, it's not drinking, which I thought, yeah. Now I'm saying, like, give your snakes water, but I was just like, that animal didn't move. And how many times does that happen? And we don't think about that kind of stuff. So, I will pick 2 weeks. Usually it's around the time where I'm out in the field or there's always a week I'm in the field, and then the 2 days I get home, and then I go to a conference. That's IHS, like every freaking summer. So it's kind of planned. But if it's outside of the egg laying period, it's in July, August, that's when I do that. And I've not seen anything bad come of it. I think it's good that they flush their systems in the middle of the activity period, not just before they're going into hibernation. And then we go right back to the feeding cycle again. And as far as what I feed them, variety. I take a play out of Owen's playbook. I was walking through Kroger's here, and they had drumsticks for $5. And I was like, falsies, here we go. And I took a video, and I can't quite get the nerve to put it up on social media because it's very gross. But I will say a 7-foot false water cobra can eat a very large drumstick in about 15 seconds. The skin was all over its head. It ripped it up, but and then it looked at me like, again, and I gave it 2 more. So I walked through the grocery store, and I'm looking and just playing around, and they eat a lot of stuff. Catfish nuggets. Everything here gets catfish nuggets. They love catfish nuggets. I don't know what the hell a catfish nugget is. It's a chunk of channel cat. That's what I've been able to deduce. But I feed those to a lot of the snakes here. The king snakes love the catfish nuggets, which I thought was really kind of interesting. So, yeah, that's kind of what I do. But the biggie for me, though, just as important as feeding the snakes, is making sure my head is in the game, because I will break that schedule to hell and back. If I'm having a bad day, I will not open a cage, and that's been a game changer. So,
Zach, can I touch on one thing you were saying about the small prey items? Have you noticed that when you do like a pile of small prey items, like let's just say like fuzzy mice, the snakes eat like very frantically? Have you noticed this?
It's like eating M&Ms.
I have a theory on this. When snakes are young and they would find like a nest of rodents or like squirrels or whatever, let's just use an example. My thought has always been, like, if you give a snake a prey item and it's big, what's the first thing they do? They duck away from that animal's head, right? So in the wild, if you come across a nest of babies, you better eat quick, because guess who's coming as soon as they hear the baby squeaking? So I actually think it's a really good thing to do for them, because it's very mentally stimulating. It's just like coming across a nest of babies in the wild, where it's like, you better eat quick because there's a problem coming. And so you'll see them like vacuum up 6 pinkies and then take off. Yep. And so that's always just been a theory I've had. And I think that's good to stimulate for them in a captive setting too, because it's just stimulating that side of their brain.
I've always done that for my bamboo
I agree with that
rat, where
100%.
I'll take a bunch of tiny ones and I'll put them in like a cork tube and just put a big pile of little tiny pinkies or fuzzies or whatever, and she just finds them. She'll come out of nowhere, just come in and just sucks them all up. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's like panic mode. They're like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right.
Yeah, I'll just say, as far as the collection, I mean, is pretty routine. I mean, you're usually weekly on everything. Some things are getting fed twice a week back there. The ball pythons, they probably get 1 week a month skipped on average, because they can go forever. The other thing that we will do, we do have certain days of the week that the nursery doesn't get fed on Mondays ever. And the reason for that, I don't want to say ever, I don't like saying that, but there may be 2 Mondays a year that they get fed, and that's because we're going to be closed on certain days because of a holiday, and so we're kind of rushing to get a meal in them. But we don't feed on Mondays simply because there may have been orders or whatnot that have come through, and we want to make sure we don't feed an animal that's going to get shipped in the next few days. So that's just one caveat to what we do. The other thing is we try to kind of keep in mind what that snake's going to go through that particular week. So, for example, if we got a 2-day show that's going to happen, there's a lot of times we won't feed because we're having to pack up, you know, a little earlier than normal. And we want to make sure that, you know, if we feed on a Tuesday and we're having to pack even on a Friday, they're still going to have some in them. You know what I mean? It's not going to be completely through yet. And it's just, we're taking a chance, you know, of a regurgitation at that point. Or even if they don't regurgitate, that's that many more crappy delis I got to deal with whenever we open up that box to the show. Yep. So, so we just try to, you know, we know if there's something that's going to go on with them. But even during our peak kind of show weeks, show months, like in Q1, things like that, where there's a bunch of rapid fire shows kind of almost every weekend taking place, we still, we're going to have to bite the bullet because we're never going to let them go longer than 2 weeks. You know what I mean? We'll miss 1 week of feeding, but they're going to eat the next one. That's, you know, and then some of the holdbacks are getting like the dual, you know, 2 days. But I agree with everything else that you guys are saying too about the differences in sizes. For the most part, they're getting fed the same size meal, but we're not counting what we're thawing. You know, when you got this many that you're feeding, it's dump 2 bags of that. You know, so sometimes it's like, you know, you're getting 2 this week, you're getting 4 today, you're getting, you know what I mean, whatever, because that's how many, you know, we happen to thaw out. So that,
you got to get on the crocodile train. You got to get some crocodiles. That is you thaw out as many as you want, and at the end of the feeding, you just go, here you go, and it all goes away.
I want to join the crocodile train, Josh.
Let's do it, dude.
My team wants us to join the crocodile trains.
I got one more thing, real quick, if you don't mind. It has to deal with crypto. So when we got crypto back in 2018, the first time, and that was, I experienced what Joe, like you can feel it with Joe's episode. And when I listened to it, it gave me PTSD because I was right there where he was. I was talking to a bunch of people, veterinarians mainly, that work with crypto. And one of them said, you know, you're the vector and it's a gastrointestinal thing. So when you go to feed them, try not to touch the rodents with your hands. And so one of the things I do is, and this is in response, it's more preventative. Every rack here, and this is at the school too, I bought the red line tongs that are colored. Like I got red ones, blue ones, orange ones, green ones. And then I have stickers on the racks. So Colin knows this too. And I have gotten where I have a cart in the garage. This is mostly with the racks. Dump all the rodents on. I never touch them with my hands. And then I pull out the tongs, and then I have a hook. And I open with the hook, the tub, grab with the tong, and kind of do the wiggle. We all do the wiggle with the dead rat. And then as the king is coming, it's almost all king snakes. As he's coming out or she's coming out, I've gotten really good at it. I kind of like flip the rat into his mouth. And at no point is that rodent actually touched by anything. And the tongs, I hit them with the peroxide before I do that. So it's basically, I've taken the probability of a spore getting in there, because the vector could be me, out of the equation. And I was just using one pair of tongs. And I talked to Dr. Bogan at Central Florida Zoo, and he was like, get tongs for each rat. I was like, okay. So that's another thing I do with feeding that has, I've not had it here to my knowledge. But at the university, when we have it pop up, this is a nice way to kind of have a peace of mind, because I know that set of tongs hasn't been in the Python lab, in the research suite, in the education suite, and you know, spraying the spores, because it takes one spore, and when they defecate out hundreds of thousands to millions for an infection. It's one of the lowest infection incidents of from a single, you know, entity. So that's a fun thing that I do. It's kind of fun to fling the road. So that's all I have on. So
all right.
Okay. Have we done it? We're at 2 hours and 13 minutes.
I think this is a good wrap point. I think these are the kind of conversations that could go on forever. You know, when we talk about what we're doing. but I think, you know, this is a good kind of part one of routines. I think we've hit the biggies for sure.
Yeah. And I want to say something. If you like this, this is like Colubrid Fest. We just did Colubrid. These are the things that people talk about at dinner. This is what you're out in the lobby of the hotel. This is what you're talking about in between talks when you go to lunch. Like, and you get to direct the conversation and pick people's brains. And that's one of my favorite things about Colubrid Fest.
This is basically what happens after a talk is given. So when we say that it's so much, you're not being talked at, you're being talked with.
Part of it.
You know, a presentation is made for 20 minutes or so, and then the entire room begins talking and sharing their ways, their methods, their ideas, you know, the things that they've hung up on, things like that. And that's where the real meat. And that's why, like, when we say that there's no sales that day, it's because we want the vendors in the room. Because think about the amount of knowledge that would be standing behind a table in another room if they were over there doing sales right then, instead of being in during those presentations, because this is what you hear from the people who are doing it, you know, right here. So you're spot on, Zac. This is the conversation that takes place after a presentation, but it's still part of the presentation hour. You know what I mean? So yeah, good point.
Oh, no, all good. So with this being said, we're going to go through you all quickly so you can say where people can find you. So Bree, where can people find you?
You can find me at Bree's Exotics. Should I spell that if you're not
Go
watching?
for it.
But and then you can also find us at the Jungle Vault on Facebook, Morph Market, and Instagram. Mike Taitula is my other half, and he shares our day-to-day room tours, everything, our cleaning, all that stuff on his YouTube. It is a partner. This is a team effort, all of these animals. So if you're big into videos, you can watch his stuff. I share time to time on Instagram. So at Bree's Exotics for me.
Perfect. Josh?
Yep, my store is The Exotic Empire. Last name is ALDER. You can look me up on Morph Market. Definitely take a look at our Instagram. That's about to start popping. We just got a bunch of new camera equipment and going to start doing a lot more of the social media stuff. One of the things we're going to start doing is species highlights. So I'm going to be highlighting a unique species probably at least once a week. So I'm really stoked about that. And then on my Facebook, there's the Exotic Empire Facebook page, and just me under my name. You can follow my personal page. I'm always posting animals there too. So
beautiful. Montross?
You can find me at Dark Horse Herpetoculture on Facebook, as well as a personal page on there. Morph Market is Dark Horse Herpetoculture, and then on Instagram is Dark Horse Herp. So any of those places, you can track me down.
Okay. Clint?
As always, you can see everything that we have available on Metazotics.com. If you decide to get yourself anything, please use coupon code CCRadio at checkout. Save yourself 5%. You can reach us at metazotics@gmail.com, Facebook, Metazotics, Instagram, MetazoticsLLC.
All righty. You can find me at Dr. Crawdad on Instagram, Zac Loughman on Facebook. Obviously, if you're interested in doing this for a living and getting a college degree, consider West Liberty University and our ZooSci and Applied Conservation major. We actually had an accepted Students Day today. And we got a lot of herp kids coming in the fall, and I am pumped. We can't have enough as far as I'm concerned. So with that being said, be it evening, afternoon, morning, or night, whatever time of day it is, have a good one, and we will see you on the next episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.